public speaking is one of the most noble professions because you get to travel the world, you get to change people's lives, and you get paid really good to do it.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Shane Sam Show. Super excited today because I got another speaker in the house, baby. This is my boy, Adam Carroll. What's going on, man? How you doing, man?
Hey, Shane. Oh, man, it's so good to be with you.
We've been trying to do this a while. I mean, we've been trying to figure out when we could coordinate this and just geek out about live events and conferences and speaking. But before we do that, tell everybody who the heck you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Adam Carroll. I reside in the rockin' metropolis of Des Moines, Iowa. You know, it's like the conference capital of the world, Shane.
Right. Everybody's coming to Des Moines. That's the I think that's actually the goal. Like when you start out as a speaker.
Yeah, it is. It's either Las Vegas or Des Moines. I'm not sure which. You know, I started speaking 20 years ago and started a seminar company, largely based around financial literacy. I co-authored a book with a buddy of mine, self-published it, didn't know what the heck I was doing. And we started marketing and promoting that book to high schools and colleges. And over about a 10 to 15 year period, I was a guest lecturer at 750 college campuses.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that actually, dude. That's insane, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, my running joke is that I've been everywhere from Florida State University on the East Coast to the University of Spoiled Children on the West Coast.
So, you have soared with the eagles, you have slithered with the snakes.
That's right.
You've been everywhere in between, my friend.
That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Been to nowhere, North Dakota, spoke at some cool schools there. I think my favorite was, oh gosh, it's a private school in Southern California. The name is escaping me now.
Pepperdine, where else? Let's see.
Actually, it was Pepperdine.
Pepperdine, there you go.
Pepperdine has their own beach. Okay, so
oh, dude, can you imagine going to school at a place like that, man? That's
I never would.
To get into.
I never would. I'd never go to class. That was my problem. So anyway, I did that for a number of years. Got pulled into doing some leadership development, speaking and training through the years. My heart has always been around financial literacy and helping people get free. And so most recently, about 3 years ago, I launched a software product called the Shred Method. And we help people blast away their debt, mortgage included, if they're so inclined, in 3 to 7 years. And so I'm teaching people how to basically like compact their their debt load, expand their income wildly, and then create freedom in 10 years or less.
It's incredible, dude. And that's kind of where our paths crossed. Because when I started out, I actually just interviewed PT the other day. He was on the podcast recently. And when I first heard about entrepreneurship at all, like I was a school teacher, like literally a history teacher and a football coach. I did that for my first decade as a working human, coaching football and doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was funny. My sister-in-law, she actually started blogging like back in like maybe 11 or 10. I don't know exactly when it was. And we were like, blogging, what is that? I'd heard about online business and I remembered she was blogging. And I was like, are you making money doing that? And she was like, I actually am. And she had just gotten back. We went to visit Jocelyn's mom and dad, and she went to this conference. Now, I'd heard of football clinics, but I'd never heard of a conference. This was, what is this magic word, this magic place that you're talking about? And she was like, I went to this thing called FinCon. So I didn't go to any live events in the first couple years that we were entrepreneurs. I should have, knowing what I know now, because the second I went to a conference, everything changed. So a couple years later, after we start our business, things are working out. They're successful. We had went to a couple little like mastermind live events, but nothing big. And I finally got around to it, and I was like, I'm just going to go to FinCon. I've always heard about this stupid thing. I had met multiple people online that went to FinCon. And I go to FinCon, and I meet you, and I'm hanging out with like Dustin Heiner and Monica Louie and just PT, and like I'm meeting all these cool people. And it just rocked my world at how, even though we're online entrepreneurs, we're online business owners, we're doing software, we're doing all these crazy things, Man, there is magic that happens when you walk up to a guy like Adam Carroll and he's standing at a tall boy at a closed bar in a hotel. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember meeting you. I remember, and then we went over to y'all had a room, or did y'all have an Airbnb or something?
What was my buddy's place? We were in Austin. Yeah, we had
That's
my
what it
buddy's
was.
place.
That's
Yeah,
what it was, man. Yeah, yeah. We went over there and we got to just hang out all night and chill. But
super
it's
fun.
funny. Like when I look back at my journey, like I really do think that going to these live events, like I make myself go once or twice a year, even now, because that's where you're just magic is happening. Like
Yeah,
how have forget the speaking for it. We'll get into the speaking stuff because we've
yeah,
got a
yeah.
lot to cover there. But how have just conferences like moved the needle for you guys?
I think there are two in particular that for me have stood out as like, oh, I found my people. And the first was FinCon, and I went to FinCon in 2014, 2013. I want to say it was in North Carolina. It was the first year I went. And my wife's like, "What are you doing? How much is this? What, do you really need to be gone?"
Is this a party? What are you doing, man? Are you just
Yeah,
going to have
yeah.
friends or what are you doing, man?
Who's gonna be there? Why are you what are you doing this for? And I get there and I text her, I'm like, I have found my people.
Mm.
Because I'd been teaching money for a long time, had been making good money at it, speaking on college campuses. I'd written books, I was selling books en masse, but I hadn't really done the course route, hadn't done any online stuff, wasn't blogging, certainly.
Oh, when you went
Wasn't
to FinCon, you had not blogged or anything yet. You
I
just
hadn't
went to
blogged.
see what it was about.
And
Wow.
I was speaking, writing books. Now, the one thing I had done, Shane, was I was working on a documentary project. And so I created a piece of content that was like a 52-minute documentary called Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. And I went to PT and I was like, dude, this ought to screen here. We should do a screening of the documentary here. And I was like in the middle of putting it together. Well, the next year he gave me a slot and said, yeah, let's show the documentary.
So it was like a
And
movie premiere. It was like a
the,
movie premiere at FinCon.
dude, it was had the big screen. We had a pretty good size audience. I was elated. But what I realized was, good people know good people.
Mm.
And so when you meet guys like you and Dustin and Monica and all the folks that we have in our circle, it's like these folks all know really good people.
Oh
So
yeah.
you start to, you start to just like pack the hamburger patty with, good people, good meat. And I had a number of years in a row of just incredible experiences meeting people. The other one that I mentioned earlier, that was a standout for me was the National Speakers Association.
I've heard so many good things about that place,
Dude,
man.
it's
Yeah.
good. Now, here's what I'll say. There's a bit of ego because some people are like,
Speakers, baby.
I'm the bomb.
Yep.
But I met some that were absolutely incredible. Like, do you know Vin Jang?
I have not met him. No.
Vin is amazing. And I watched him, I think I'm a pretty good presenter. And I sat back and watched Vin do his thing. And I was like, bro, this guy's at another level.
Yeah.
And so I started following everything he was doing. And candidly, I started following him right before COVID. And he was like, I just, $300,000 worth of speaking gigs just went completely off the table. He said, I'm putting 50 grand in my garage. I'm going to build out a studio because no one's going to pay you full fee for
Yeah.
a two-dimensional Zoom chat.
Right.
And that led me to building the studio I'm in and, doing online programming. And he saved me. I mean, he literally, his like forewarning had me put everything in place. And I was making great money during COVID years doing a program on Zoom and then going sitting in my couch watching a movie in the afternoon. It was
That's right.
brilliant.
Isn't that amazing though? It's like, the connections are like really the heart of why you go to these conferences. Like I did this thing recently. Have you read Alex Hormozzi's book, $100 Million Leads?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that book is
Brilliant.
so good, dude. That
Dude,
book,
totally.
that is a master class in rolling up your sleeves and getting to work,
Yeah.
which is what speaking really is. But like, one of the things in that book he did was like take an inventory of the people in your life that can help you achieve your goals, right?
Right.
Or would be leads for your products or services or businesses. So, I mean, I've got a big email list, I've got an audience, and I've got these things. So when I read that chapter, I started. I wanted to really answer the question: who do I know that also has an email list and also has an audience, right?
Yeah.
So I one night, man, I spent like 4 hours just sitting here in front of this computer in the dark, looking through my Facebook friends, right? And I'm just going down my Facebook friends. I'm literally started at A and just started looking, just started scrolling, right? And I started typing in like not just people superficially, because as you speak, people add you and you get lots of friends and they're not really friends, right?
Yeah.
But I started like saying like Adam, Dustin, Pat, just all these different people, right? And I was very specific though. I was like, I only want to know people I've met in person that I actually text and have a relationship with.
Yeah.
And I met them like I've met them and I know them, right? And I came up with like 154
I love it.
actual living, breathing humans that I made a connection with, stayed in touch with,
Yeah.
and had audiences that we could help each other with, right? And what was crazy when I get this thing done, and I had specific criteria. Like I tried to imagine if they had like a 10,000 or more person email list, if their podcast got so many downloads. I was like, who are these people in my network? And I started looking, then I went back through the list and I started saying, well, like, who are they? What are they? Every single one of those people I had met attending a conference, not just speaking, but these were people who I had went to a live event as an attendee and made the connection out in the lobby and like became friends. And I was like, that's crazy. Because I mean, I've not been to like a million live events. I mean, I go to like 2 a year for 10 years. It's like 20, 30 live events, right?
Right.
Dang, man, you just get so deep so fast when you show up in person. And then I started thinking about like, you know, you say like you met that guy. Like it doesn't sound like you have like a deep relationship with that guy.
No.
You met him and you just saw him on stage and he became a person you observed regularly.
Correct.
And like that guy to me is Russell Brunson. Like I went and saw Russell Brunson speak. I went to a mastermind at ClickFunnels headquarters. So I met him in the bathroom for 5 seconds. Like this, he answered a question on stage.
Was it awkward? Was it?
Oh, dude, it was hilarious. He walked in, and me and him were in there by ourselves, and we were standing by. You know, so I'm at the urinal. I walk up behind him. He walks up. He looks over. I mean, he's freaking Russell Brunson, and you know he's got this guy who's attending his event. We're standing there, and like we both get done at the same time, and we're walking over, and I'm like, bro, you're cool, man. We ain't got to talk. We ain't got to do nothing. Just wash your hands, man. I'll shake your hand later. That's all I said to him. Like, so we had no meaningful interaction, but like just seeing that in person, like it's like even that, like the value you get out of having someone you can follow, having a model you can do it just because you saw him on stage.
Totally.
And you just can't get that watching a YouTube video, bro. You just can't do it.
You know what I love too about your story is that I've done something similar, and I actually talk about this at to audiences all the time. You got to create a Power 100 list. And they're the 100 people in your life that like, love, and respect you. You took it to another level of those who have a list that could also help promote. And I'm going to take that back and you know, ponder that on how we grow Shred that exact same way. But I love using the Power 100 list. I've got about 470 people on my list now that they'll get an email from me about every quarter or 6 months, just saying, here's what I'm up to. Here's a couple of resources for you. I wish the best. Tell me how I can help. But what I know is that when I'm launching something, I can go to them and say, will you be on my launch crew? You know, if you're on the launch team, here's what it looks like. Would you be willing to do that? And I would say 30 to 40% of them are like, whatever I can do for you, I will.
Yeah, man. It's just, it only comes down to, do they have time, you know?
Right.
And like those connections too, like it's the people you've met in person that are most likely to be in that 30%.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like do you know who Nick Unsworth is?
I don't.
Yeah, so Nick Unsworth it's one of those, he's one of those people who's like him and Dave Chesson. You know Dave Chesson? You know,
I know Dave's name. I don't know him personally, but
okay, that's exactly who these guys were to me forever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And like, but then like we met at something live in person, and it's like, oh, I've always known about you, but now we're actually in the circle together. Like these are guys like I just saw that Nick was I thought of him today because he posted that him and Megan were having a baby. They just were pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna text Nick. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if I had ever met him in person, then we met at a Chris Ducker conference. That's where we met, right? So like, like if you never meet anyone in person, you don't have, it's like, should I text him? Should I not text him? Is this going to look weird? But like that in-person connection just changes the game of what you can like do with people. You know what I'm saying?
You and I are Vox buddies. We're not even text buddies. We're just
We're not even
Vox
text buddies.
buddies.
We just Voxer it's the lazy man's texting. You know what I'm saying? It's just like I'll hit the big orange button and say words while we're driving around.
Yeah,
You know what's funny is my Voxer is definitely all my speaker people. It's people who like to talk.
I love it, man. That's so good.
You actually started in speaking first.
I
Okay.
did.
The seminar world is a weird world. I ran a seminar company for the last 3 or 4 years. Holy smokes. You talk about travel and egos and intersections and craziness.
Yeah.
But what's the difference then of getting on stage? I know a lot of people that listen to my shows would love
Yep.
to maybe go to a conference. They maybe have never been to one, but even just to get on stage, it's such a big, that 2 foot riser is a big leap,
It's a big
right?
deal.
But you're one of the guys in my circles that speaks all the time. Like you are who I would consider a speaker. Like if someone's like, "Who's Adam?" Like I think Jocelyn asked me earlier, "Who's Adam?" I said, "A speaker." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really respect. Really know we geek out. Like why speaking? Speaking is so time consuming.
Yeah.
It's so much wear and tear, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
on the outside looking in, you're like, why do that? Everybody wants to do it, then you do it, and you're like, why do I do this? But why have you just went so far into the speaking world as a way to grow shred and grow everything that you do?
Yeah. Years ago when I started wondering about like what am I going to do and who do I want to be in my life? And this was like turbulent 20s. Everyone goes through it. You're trying to figure yourself out, trying to decide, am I going to go into sales? Am I going to try and ride the corporate ladder? What am I going to do? And it hit me one day when I was 28. I was driving around, Shane, in a sales role, and I was listening to a Mark Victor Hansen CD. This is going to really date me. I'm putting CDs in my.
At least it wasn't an 8-track or a tape.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't a
At least we
tape.
made it to CDs in your
It
life.
wasn't
Here.
a tape, although I think the car had a tape player as well. But I'm listening to Mark Victor Hansen, who was one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he made this comment. He said, public speaking is one of the most noble professions because you get to travel the world, you get to change people's lives, and you get paid really good to do it. And as I'm driving around, and I think I was a clothier at the time. I was like hawking suits and shirts and sport coats to upper level executives. And I didn't love the job, but I loved the people I was meeting, and I loved the fact that I got to impact some people on a daily basis. But I thought, that's what I want. Those 3 things are what I want to do. And similar to you, I called a buddy of mine and I said, dude, I don't think I want to do this job anymore. He goes, what do you want to do? I said, I want to speak for a living. And he said, well, Anne, who we worked with 2 summers ago, she's in this company. Let me connect you. And so it was just like, boom, boom, boom. We started getting connected. And I worked for a company for the first about year and a half of my speaking career where they would set up the events for me and I would just go, deliver their message. But the message was lame. We would personalize it. And there were like 5 or 6 of us that were kind of the go-to. They'd put us on any stage anywhere and we could handle the audience. And I realized like, if I can keep the attention of 9th graders through sophomores in college, I can pretty much keep anybody's attention.
Right.
And so, fast forward a few years, I was reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And what I kept getting challenged by was, how do I make my time more valuable?
Mm.
And he was talking about in the book, the new rich versus the old rich. The old rich make 100 grand a year, but work 60 hours a week. The new rich work 20 hours a week, but make 50 grand a year. Who's wealthier,
Right.
And I just kept asking myself the question, how do I make more money in an hour than most people make in a month?
Mm.
And the answer kept coming back. I'm going to go speak and I'm going to get really, really good on the platform. And so I studied. I watched God knows how many hours of Comedy Central, and I dissected TEDx events. And I like studied the greats to figure out what were they doing that made them great. And it just, for me, Shane, even the wear and tear on my body and my health and family life when my kids were really young, I was like, I'm doing this for a reason. And it's going to get us to a point where our life is going to be as big as you can imagine it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 4-Hour Workweek is an interesting our stories are so similar. Every time I talk to you, I'm just like, we're the same. It's like we're in the multiverse and we're like the same guy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
because the 4 Hour Work Week, I read that book when I was leaving teaching. It was one of the books that inspired when I found out about online business. I just looked for books and I found the 4 Hour Work Week. And I'm reading this going, this can't be real what this guy is talking about right now.
Right.
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 And I read that book. And so I actually went into my online business first before I even thought about speaking. And I was like, I'm going to build the 4 Hour Work Week. We're going to find a business. That was the prompt I gave to my subconscious to find. Like you said,
Yes.
I'm going to figure out a way to make more in an hour than most people make in a month or
Yep.
whatever. And I said, I'm going to find a way to get this 4 Hour Work Week to go.
I
So
love
me
it.
and Jocelyn create this company. It was called elementarylibrarian.com. And we were like, well, this is a digital library of lesson plans for librarians. So if they join, we don't have to work. We just have to do customer service and
Yeah.
make sure they get their crap, right?
Totally.
So we built this. We got that. There was a year there where I'm like, we work 2 hours a week. This is stupid that this is even possible. And we're making more money like in a month than you can make in a year being a school teacher, right?
Right. And the librarian niche is such a popular niche, you know?
Oh, it was a lot of competition. Not really. I don't even think Scholastic made lesson plans for them. So we definitely found a little bit of a blue ocean when we got into that, right?
Yeah.
But dude, it sucked. It absolutely sucked because I didn't know what to do with my time. There was no real purpose in it. We were just doing it to make money. We were impacting people. We got amazing messages from librarians that were like, I get to go home at 3:30. I get to go to my kids' ball games. Like it was rewarding, but it was also boring. Right.
Right. Right.
And then I got my taste of speaking a little bit. Well, it's a funny story how I got into speaking. I'm not going to name names here, but I'll tell you how I got into speaking. Okay. So what happened was I went to an event and people knew our podcast. I went to a live event and a lot of the people there wanted us to speak at the event. Like they were treating us like speakers because we were one of the most well-known attendees at the time.
Right.
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 This was after we started Flipped Lifestyle. And we went to this thing and then the event organizer asked me to speak. He's like, hey, will you speak next year? Everybody wanted you to speak. It'd be cool. Let's just go ahead and put you on the slate. Now, I'd never spoke before. I'd never done that except for, coaching football teams at halftime, right?
Right.
That was my speaking experience was halftime speeches. I wasn't even the pregame speech. I was the halftime speech, right? So I was like, sure, I will do it. That sounds amazing. I want to see if I can get into this. I got an email about a week later from their team, not even the organizer, and they said, hey, we know we asked you to come speak, but we've decided we want to go with real speakers only at our events.
Oh.
And I was like, I was so mad. And if anybody knows me, once I get mad, I'm going to do stupid crap. Like I'm going to rage and burn myself into the ground. You know what I'm saying? Until I fix the problem. So I decided to have my own live event. I was like, if you're going to kick me off your stage, I'll just build my own. And my wife and I got 100 people to show up in Nashville, Tennessee to come to our own event.
Yeah, I love it.
And we hosted a 2-day event. And when I got up there, it was so much effort, so much energy. I mean, I carried 2 days of the whole thing. I didn't have any other speakers. I taught 8 hours a day, 2 days in a row, dude.
That's a lot.
That was my first speaking gig was that. But here's what I realized. When I came home, I was tired. I was exhausted. And I was like, let's do that again.
Totally.
And then we started planning for the next one. We did it. COVID hits. And at the end of 2020, I get a call from a guy who I partnered with to start this live event company. And that's when I was just like going on the road 2-3 times a week, seminars, speaking at big events. And I realized it's not about having a 4-hour work week. It's finding something you want to work 70 hours a week on. Like you said, finding something that's worth doing that to yourself, to giving it all and leaving it on the field. And that's what speaking really became to me, man. It was just like, man, this is because like podcasts are fine. YouTube is fine. Give me 3,000 people in a room and I will move all of their mountains for them from that stage. And you just see that there's such a speed to action in a live event that you just can't get. So if anybody has a business out there and you're doing anything, if you want to really move the masses, you need to go get in front of the masses, man. You need a mountain to stand on and give a speech to. And they just go, man. And I think that's I feel that from you. You're like, this is it.
It
This is
is.
the impact. This is what's going on.
And no matter what I do, Shane, I mean, I've said this before when people are like, what will you do when you retire? The intention for Shred is to build it, grow it, make it an acquisition target, sell it off, and have lots of free time to go out and tell that story to various other people. And they're like, "What will you do?" I'll go speak. I mean, I will find ways and places to go share the story and impact people at a really high level. Because for me, that's it. And I
Retirement.
think
I hate that word. Why would you retire?
I
Like you
know,
only get one life. You're just going to sit down the last 10? Come on, people.
yeah.
That's not cool, man. Let's just keep going and find something to do, man.
Exactly. Yeah, and maybe this is you and I's foray into doing big events together, because I went down the same path with a former business partner. We started doing these programs called Succeed Faster. And we'd have 100, 150 college students and young professionals. We did it 5 years in a row. And yeah, I think we were on a roll. And then his business took off and mine took a different direction. But they were so fun
Yeah.
to get that many people in a room together. And today, the likes of the people who were there, Chandler Bolt, you might know Chandler
Oh, I know
from
Chandler. He's been on the podcast.
selfpublishing.com. He
Yep.
was a Succeed Faster grad. We got guys who are like second in line at LinkedIn, and they're
That came from that audience,
it came from that
basically.
audience. Yeah,
Wow,
these are
man.
kids that, like, I say kids, they were 20 years old, 18 to 22, 25.
That's kids to
But
us, bro. We got gray hair and stuff. You know
that's
what
right.
I'm
That's right.
saying? Right.
Um, I'm only 40 several, man, but I still
Did
act
you
like
say
I'm
40
26.
several? Is that what you said?
40 several. Yeah,
I'm
40 several.
46. I'll throw it out there, man. Hey,
There we
listen, I
go.
welcome the gray. I think these golden locks, this crown of wisdom, baby. Come on, bro. I'm welcome. At least I've still got mine, so I got to just go with the gray, whatever they
You
give me.
totally do. I shave mine just so I'm ageless, right? Because then
That's right.
I'll never age
That's
a
how you
day.
put. That's how you get to say several, and I don't.
Exactly.
Right there, man.
Exactly. But we put all these people in a room together, and it was an iron sharpens iron conference. And I
Mhm.
think when you go to the right kind of conference and you realize it's iron sharpens iron, it's a big deal. I
Yeah.
want to answer really quick the question you had about speaking, though, and getting to the stage, and that extra 2 foot riser makes a big deal. I did a program at FinCon a couple of years ago on speaking and building a six-figure, a recurring six-figure income with speaking. And it was kind of amazing. I got up. It was a packed breakout session. I mean, like literally spilling out into the hallway. And, people knew that's what I did, but no one was really coming up to me in the hallway prior to getting on stage.
Oh yeah.
I share my message, share the story, talked about the strategies that I use to get gigs. And all of a sudden people are flooding, like, can I coach with you? Do you have a course? Can we do, how does this work? So there is something about being elevated to the position of speaker, no matter what you're touting, pitching, what have you, that people are like, oh, this person's important because I got a bright light on them.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't know how you got up there. That's what I realized very
Right.
quickly. And
Right.
like, because we all have insecurities, we don't really know where we're all looking for our place in the world. And no matter how
Yeah.
much you win or succeed, you're always like, oh, imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
But like that's what I realized. If you go up on that stage, and like I actually have changed almost all my pictures on my website to just me on stage, because
Yeah.
it's just like now that I have a bunch of them, it's like people get there and they're scrolling and they're like, what in the world? What is this guy doing for a living?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it just
Absolutely.
gives you so much authority. And that makes me think of two of my favorite moments speaking. I'd like to hear yours too. Like my first one is I went before I'd start doing big events, like these big stage 8 to 10,000 people, crazy events, right?
Yeah.
Pat Flynn asked me, well, Pat Flynn was having his conference, FlynnCon, right? He'd started his
Yeah.
own conference. He was going to have like 500 people in San Diego. I saw him advertise it or mention it. So I text Pat and I was like, and I will go to the ends of the earth for Pat Flynn for everything he's done
Yeah.
for me
Amazing
and
dude.
Jocelyn. And I said, hey, me and Jocelyn will fly out there on our own dime and do whatever we got to do. You want us to work a booth? You want us to whatever you got to do to make FlynnCon awesome, dude. We will come out and do it. And he was like, well, why don't you come up on stage with me? And I was like, deal. That's incredible. Well, I've never even thought to do something like that before, right?
Yeah.
And then we get done, and people had it was cool because those people had heard my podcast, which is well known on his show. So they were all like, "Oh," it was like a surprise. He didn't tell them who we were going to be on the slate. He just kind of he played part of the clip, and people were kind of rustling, and we went out there. And as we were walking off the next segment, there was going to be a break, and there was a line just forming at the bottom of the steps,
I
right?
love it.
And we were gonna. I was like, "Hey Pat, we'll meet you backstage." And he stopped me, and he goes, "No, no, that line's for you." And I went, "What?" And we walked down there and just got mobbed. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I just saw that power of like being on stage, like in that moment, you know?
Yes.
And then my second favorite moment, like ever being on stage, is and I've done some big venues that are like in my mind, like, holy crap, like why am I even up here? But that's not my favorite. Like it wasn't 10,000 people here, 8,003, whatever. I was at Podcast Movement. So after I spoke at Pat's, I was like, I sent a message to Jared Easley, who is with Podcast Movement. And I said, "Hey, I'd love to speak. I'll just do it for free. You're in Nashville. I can drive. I don't care. I just want to get on the stage." He goes,
Yeah.
"I'll put you on a side stage." Right. So I get in there and I get, it was in the Gaylord Hotel in Nashville, that big ballroom they've got up on the second floor.
Massive.
And they had three stages. There was main stage and then two side stages. So when the main stage wasn't full, the side stages had two people going at the same time.
Oh,
So
wow.
you were far enough away where you couldn't really hear what was going on. So it
Yeah,
was breakout session-y kind of thing, right?
totally.
And so I go up on stage and I got some friends there that came and watched. I'd emailed my list, so like some people came and watched. And I probably had like 30, 40, 50 people when it started. But and I'm just bombastic and I'm loud and I'm like I'm in the story, right? So I'm up there telling the story, putting in all the stuff I've learned from other people, and I'm going after it. Bro, I'm watching this happen in real life. I people start walking in from the vendors hall. And then I look over and I see people walking from the other side that were listening to that talk. And I see people start coming over toward me. And I bet I started with 30 to 50 and I probably ended with 100,
I love it.
and bro, I walked off that stage just an addict, just an absolute. I was like, how can I speak more? How can I get on like
Right.
for stages, dude? What's a couple of your favorite like just moments being on stage or lines
Oh,
at the end of the table or just one or two? Like, yeah,
yeah. The one, I mean, there's a couple that stand out for me, but one in particular, I had done one TEDx event at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and it went great, but the video was terrible. The lighting was bad. It was their first go at it. So I'm like, okay, I got one under my belt. And then I get home and like 4 to 5 weeks later, I got an invite to a TEDx event at the London Business School. And I'm like, this is no joke. This is a
yeah,
big time TEDx deal. And so I flew over, prepped the material, felt really confident about it. But then I get in there, Shane, and I had massive imposter syndrome because I'm up I'm up on the stage with people like the producer of the Nelson Mandela biopic and the woman who created the first affinity program, like the largest marketing firm in the UK. The leader of the London gang, like one of the biggest London gang. He'd been shot 7 times and stabbed 10 times, and now he's a beat poet. And so he's getting up there and he's doing this beat poetry. And I'm like, I am a dude from Iowa who played a game of Monopoly with his kids with real cash. Why am I here? You know,
right.
I told my wife, and I was like speaker 14 of 17 that day. So it's an all day event. But the talks are, 12 to 15 minutes, 17 minutes. And I remember saying to my wife, I got to go back to the hotel and get my head right. I got to leave for just a few minutes. So I go back, I run through the speech a couple times, but I got up on that stage and no one had been laughing the entire day. So I'm like, are these jokes even going to fly in London? And all of a sudden I did a couple and they were chuckling and then they were laughing. And I was like, oh, I have a place here.
Yeah,
And, fast forward, that thing went to 1 million views in like 6 months. And it's now
unbelievable.
sitting at about 6.2, 6.3 million views. So for me, that talk was one of those like, now it's the big time. I'm ready to go out and do
Yeah,
whatever I set my mind to from a speaking perspective. Earlier on, when I was working for that company in my first 2 years of speaking, I mentioned there were like 6 of us they would send to any school. And the schools that would hire us were typically like high schools and some colleges, but they would give us what their minority percentage was. So you would be able to tell, like, what's the mix of students in here? It's a 20% minority.
Yeah.
And they were never really specific, but so I go to one, it said a 0% minority school. And I was like, well, that's interesting. It was in Houston, Texas.
Oh my gosh.
And they send me, and by the way, I get down there, the rental car lot has no rental cars left, but they do have a white step van. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to take it, I guess. So I'm in a white step van outside a high school in Houston, Texas. And I'm like going through what I'm going to do when I get in. And I walk in there. It is 0% minority because it is 100% Black students at this school.
Oh my gosh. It was just a homogenous school of African American kids.
Yes.
Oh, and you didn't know it until you walked in the door?
I didn't know till I walked in. And I'm like, okay, roll with it, AC. I can do this. And so they get all these, group of kids, they start walking in. And I think at the time they had us in suits, which was totally stupid on the high school level. But I like take my jacket off and I'm like, I bet I know what you're all thinking. What did they send this skinny little white kid here to talk to me about? And I said, well, first and foremost, because I'm the only one who could come up and do this. And I put the microphone up to my mouth and I'm like, and I start dancing around. And they're all like, oh, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Oh, that's incredible.
It was hilarious. And so they're all high-fiving me afterwards. And we had a good chat. I had a good chat with 5 or 6 of them after the fact. But again, I walked away going, anybody can own a room.
Yeah.
Anybody can, but you got to put in the reps to own the room.
Yeah. You've got to, the reps are not just the speaking itself. It's like, people always ask me, like, the first time I ever spoke, I had a death spot like you had, like 14 of 17. So listen to this. The first time I ever spoke to like a big audience, like it was 2,800 or something like that. So it was a conference center. It wasn't a conference center. It was like a world, no, what do they call it? A county fair place. It was like a big warehouse looking thing.
Yeah.
We had 2,800 people or something in there. I was the second to last speaker before the headliner. So before me, I kid you not, was Miss Universe. She had won Miss Universe. So just the most beautiful smoke show you've ever seen on your entire life, walking out on stage.
Right.
And then the headliner, the guy after me in Florida, was Tim Tebow. And I was pinned right between them. That's Mrs. Tebow, by the way, too. You know what I'm saying? The Miss Universe. Yes.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
That was the first thing that ever, like, I got wedged like into that. But I go out there and it was kind of like you. I was like, well, I can't be Tim Tebow. I'm not going to go give an inspiring talk.
Yeah.
And I can't be Miss Universe because
you don't have the legs.
I'm a dude. Right. Exactly. Right. So, but I was just me. I was just authentic. I was my accent. I was a country guy. I was making them laugh. They had a good time. And I got ranked like 5th out of 12 speakers that they did customer surveys on.
I love it.
Like after that, because it was just like you found your spot. And people came up to me afterwards and they were like, you are a natural. You are just a natural. You were born to do this. I can't believe you were able to go up there and get that response and make sales and whatever you did. And what I was thinking in the back of my head was, a natural. I've recorded 1,000 podcasts. Right. I have told all my stories 1,000 times. Totally. I would go to conferences. Like I went to Tony Robbins one time. He was at ClickFunnels. And everyone else was like, motivational, motivational, motivational. I was timing the PowerPoint to see how long he stayed on slides.
Yes.
He did this weird thing where he would show himself on camera and then it would show something else and then he would move. And I noticed he was moving when he was not on camera. So when he came back on camera, people were like, where'd he go? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was reverse of that. When he was on camera, he would move and then it would go off. And then everyone would have to, where'd he go in the room? They'd have to find him.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, and he was on an exact 90-second timer. I'm like breaking down this like football game film, but like all that effort, all that energy, all that work led to that moment when I got my shot.
Yes.
That I could have a great talk and I could be able to present that. So like with your presentations, like this is my favorite part of our conversations.
Yeah.
What are like 3 things you think that a speaker has to do to have a great talk? Because we've both got all the reps. We've done all the studying. This is like,
Yep.
I mean, you've been speaking for 20 years. I've been doing it now for like 6 or 7, like just all the reps. Like, what makes a great talk? When you get that opportunity, when you get that elevation, what do you think are things you just have to do to win that crowd and to
Yeah.
keep them with you to the end? And then and most importantly, they take the idea with them after the talk.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that comes to mind right away, you have to nail the beginning and the ending.
Oh yeah.
Have to. I've seen too many people like, well, that's all I've got, and then it's like, okay, see you later,
Yeah. Fade to
There's
black. We have no idea where you're going. What's happening
totally,
right now? Yeah.
there's got to be this like huge, in my mind, there's got to be a big entrance, not a like, hey, good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? Because I've seen those folks and it's just like, oh, wah. But one of my buddies who's a brilliant speaker as well, he'll come in and right off the bat, he like launches into a level 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I got 2 goals for everyone here today. Number one, we're going to have fun. Number two, he says, number one, we're going to have fun. Who wants to have fun? Say yes. Number two, this is going to be relevant. So you're going to take something away from my event. So will you promise at the end of my session to have at least one idea you'll take action on? Please say yes. Yes.
2 yeses in the first 30 seconds, baby. That's what you need.
And then I started doing something where, I'll do a quick intro of myself, maybe a story. And people always like to know, like, who is this guy? So I'll throw up a family pic and tell a funny story about my kids or my dog. And then I go, hey, listen, I'm all about audience participation. So when I say savvy, you say savvy, savvy. And they all go savvy. I go, when I say you dig, you say we dig. You dig? We dig. And I do it in almost every program. But my intention is that when I have them, right, I have them recalling things back to me, or I have them raising their hand or high-fiving their neighbor or whatever it may be, they're engaged. So they don't even think of something else while they're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me, man, 45 minutes flew by or 90 minutes flew by, or I can't believe it was an entire day with you.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it is, but like you, it's breaking down game film and figuring out who is doing this just a massively high level. Like I remember Andy Andrews was speaking at a Remax convention, and it was in Vegas. There are 10,000 real estate agents in the conference hall. And he was doing his shtick and it was hilarious and fun. But I was watching him crawl over people in the audience to high five someone 4 rows back.
Mm.
And those of us in the risers were like, when is he going to come touch me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
And so I was thinking through that and watching other people that, like Jack Canfield is a mentor of mine. And I watch Jack religiously do what he does. And he would go down and, put his hand on someone's shoulder and talk to them one-on-one. And everyone else is just like enraptured by what he was saying.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me, I'll go down in the audience and I'll like tap on somebody. Hey, what's your name? Jim. This is Jim, everybody. Will you say hi to Jim? Jim, where'd you come from today? I just want to know, I appreciate you. I'll do some, talk to him independently. But then other people like, when is he going to come talk to me?
And they feel like you're talking to them, like in that moment. And I love how you watch. I love how you watch other people to do this, because that guy's probably never seen Jack Canfield or whatever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't know that you got that from that. He just feels that moment. And there's nothing new under the sun. The thing that I do, one, the first minute to me is the most important minute of your entire talk. If you win the first minute and you know how to get off stage, they'll forgive you in the middle, right? And I love professional wrestling. I study professional wrestling. I study promos because like they're the greatest speakers and entertainers. I think it's our highest form of human art, to be honest with you. I really do. Professional wrestling.
Yes.
And like there's a guy named Paul Heyman. He's a manager. So he manages the wrestlers. He's like Bobby the Brain Heenan or one of these guys, right?
Yeah.
And he started doing this thing. It was so simple. He would get the microphone and like he would immediately, the first second out of his mouth, he would go, "My name is Paul Heyman." And like, it was just so simple, but it was like at 11, man, when he did it.
Yeah.
And people started chanting. They would go, "Paul Heyman," whenever he would do it. So I just, the first words out of my mouth always, in every talk, no matter where I give it, 10 people, 10,000 people, "Y'all, my name is Shane Sams." I just do it every time. And I know that no matter what, I will get my name right. And it lets me shout that very
Yes.
first thing to alert the crowd
Yes.
and so win that first minute, man, and you get it done. Sorry,
I love
so we
it.
got like win the first minute, win the last minute. What else do you do to make a great talk?
Yeah. I've had this theory for a long time that every great speaker needs 5 stories, 5 1-liners, and 5 quotes memorized. And I'm talking like written down, the story, when the jokes hit in the story. The one-liners are like quick hits that are funny. So one of my, as an example of one of my one-liners, I'll often say to people, is everybody still with me? Because some of you look like I just took a bunch of Amish kids into Best Buy for the first time.
That's a
And
good joke. That's a good
peop,
joke, dude. There's
peop,
no
peop,
fat on that joke. Every
there's
word
no fat on
matters.
that
That's a
joke.
good joke, dude.
And then I'll make a joke after of like, my wife tells me I shouldn't tell that joke, but I don't think there's any Amish people in this audience. And then people laugh at that. And I'm like, are there any? Are there? Okay, just curious. And so I'll use one-liners like that. Another one-liner, um, oh gosh, I've got a ton of them, but it'll be things like, again, are you still with me? Some of you are looking at me like a dog looks at a ceiling fan. Or like, did I go too fast? Some of you are looking at me like a dog looks at a ceiling fan. So the one-liners are just quick hits to catch people. And my buddy, the gentleman I referred to earlier, he would say things like, if you're here, say I'm here. And he would just do it in the middle of a
Yeah.
program to get people back. And they go, I'm here. And he goes, if you're not here, say I'm not here. And someone who wasn't listening would say, I'm not here. And he'd go, thank you for your honesty. What's your name? And then he would engage that person,
Yeah, man.
But the stories for me are really important, Shane, because you can have a great story, but it can be told in a not great fashion.
Sure.
And you can have a great story that is written out, it's practiced, it's honed, the jokes are smart. When you do that, I've got a story about a rollover accident that I was in when I was 22. It can be a leadership story. It can be an overcoming adversity story. It can be a vision story. It doesn't matter how I tell the story, but when I tell it, people are just like on the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. The story. That's what I spend most of my time on is getting the emotions right in my stories. Like I want to
Yep.
make sure people feel something to create moments. One-liners can create moments too. Like I've got a few one-liners in my head that I pulled a one-liner out on you so we spoke at a conference earlier this year, and you were doing this activity with holding up the string.
Yes.
And
yes.
you were busting my chops a little bit, and
Yes.
you were giving me heck about being from Kentucky or something like that. And I grabbed the microphone and pulled it over, and I was like, "Listen, son, don't confuse my intellect from my dialect, because I might say something that can change your life." And the crowd goes, "Oh." But dude, I have
Yeah.
said that on every webinar, every speech. Like, but people, the one-liners are so off the cuff. If you do it right, it looks off the cuff, and that it's such a good way to like get the audience back
Totally.
so that you can correct course or tell the story or like do whatever you need to do. And I love
Yes.
the concept of the 5 stories, 5 one-liners, because there's times you get on stage and like you can get confused, especially when you're talking a lot. Like if you're speaking week after week after week,
Yep.
I get on stage sometimes and I'm like, did I already say this? Like because you can't remember because you've told the same talk over and over and over again. But if you've got that one-liner in your back pocket, you can kind of throw something out there and it's almost like a little grenade in the audience, and it distracts them for a minute so you can think while they're laughing like at your
100%.
Yeah, man.
My favorite one to use is a phone goes off, horns go off, an alarm goes off in the building somewhere, fan kicks on, whatever. I'll stop and I'll go, is everyone hearing that or am I having a stroke? And people will typically laugh at that, especially if it's something loud. It's like
Yeah. Like
something's
somebody
going
drops a
on.
dish or something crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then the quotes thing, I want to touch on that real quick because I think there are brilliant quotes out there that clearly encapsulate whatever idea you're trying to give to the audience. And if I said, "Hey, there's a quote that I want to share with you," and it's often misquoted as being a Nelson Mandela quote, but it's actually from Marianne Williamson in her book, A Return to Love, and it goes like this: "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be talented, fabulous, gorgeous? In reality, who are you not to be? Your
Mhm.
playing small doesn't serve the world." And when I do that in an audience, the intellect goes up just a little bit for the people who are watching you. And it's pretty easy to memorize 5 quotes from people that you could just rip out. And it's powerful, it's impactful. And it's just
And
added
those are good
content.
fillers when you don't really know how to like transition or get off stage or
Yeah.
whatever. My go-to quote is a Mother Teresa quote. She said, "A reporter asked Mother Teresa, 'Do you really think you can change the world?' And she laughed in his face, and she said, 'I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast my stone out upon the waters and cause many ripples.'" And that's my go-to ending when I have no clue how to do anything else, is pulling a quote from somebody else. And you steal authority. People don't realize that.
Yes.
Like some people, I've had people I've taught speaking to, like coaching them, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, I don't want to use a quote because that's not me. I want them to remember my words." And
Right.
I'm like, they're gonna remember Mother Teresa over you, but they're gonna remember you said it. So you just use Mother Teresa's quote, man. That's free
Yeah,
copy right there. Just go throw it at. You're just putting it in at the mix to make your point. Like you get you
totally.
get you get the rub, dude, from these people when you get that quote out there. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
man. The one thing that you did, I took notes on you too. I was watching you and like I was breaking it down. You are way better at me at body language. Like your body language on stage, like your posture is very up. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you're standing. I'm kind of just moseying around with my hand in my pocket sometimes and kind of looking around. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I've done enough work yet on my body language. Do you work on body language on stage? Like that's kind of like a third tip here. Like, do
I
you work on
do.
that, or is it just from reps? Because you're really, really good physically on stage. Like your hand motions seem to match where you're going, and like like I noticed one time you would like smooth your shirt, or you would, you know what I'm saying? Like there was like
Yeah.
little things you would do with your clothes, and you'd like stop and kind of stand up and look over to the right. Like, do you work on that, or is it just reps?
I would say I worked on it for a very long time and now it's reps, but the movement, I think for speakers who maybe don't have the reps in yet, they're pacers. They'll pace back and forth on the stage. And it's funny if you watch a speech with the sound off and you just see someone doing this.
Oh,
I'm like,
dude, I'm gonna go do that to myself as soon as we get off here. I'm gonna be
there,
like, what am I doing on stage, man? Oh my
it
gosh.
almost comes across as being nervous. And I've talked to speakers
Mm.
before where I'm like, hey, if you're nervous, you need to pick a spot and deliver a story from that spot. But know that you're delivering, I'll deliver a 60-minute talk in 3 acts. And the acts will be 20 minutes long, but I might do 20 minutes on the right side of the stage. And once I'm done with the story, then I'll come over to the left side of the stage and I'll end in the center. And I'm trying as I'm doing it to like make eye contact with individuals in the audience.
Yeah.
A speaker that I heard one time, which I really love this advice, he said, "Your job on stage is not to be seen, it's to see." And if I'm seeing
Ooh.
who's in the audience and I'm like making eye contact with them, are you getting this? Not if you're getting this. And I'll like point at people, you get this, right? So my movements generally are pretty structured, but it's done in a way that's somewhat subconscious now, Shane. I'm not like,
Yeah, yeah, for
oh,
sure.
I'm 7 minutes in, move to the right. It's more like I'm nearing the end of this story and I've talked to this part of the audience. I'm going to move over here and talk to this part of the audience.
One of the best tips I got early on when I was really starting to do the big events was this legendary speaker. His name's James Smith. Just an amazing. That dude just owns the whole room. I mean, it's incredible. And I remember one time I was just like, it was like second or third time we had spoke together, and I was just like, "Hey, what'd you see out there?" He had watched me talk, and he said, "Hey, you did a great job. Talk to people. You made some eye contact." He goes, "Only problem is nobody upstairs got any of your eyes." I never looked like up to the rafters in
Yeah,
this venue, and he was like, "You got to look at everybody, man. And that's
totally.
got to be practice when you do it.
Yep.
What are you going to do it?" And like I really started thinking about where my eyes were going in the
Yeah.
stadium. And then when I started doing it, craziest thing, you have the meet and greets after, everybody comes up to you and talks to you.
Yep.
And I had someone tell me literally from the top row, like, "Man,
You were looking right at
you were
me.
looking right at me during that one point. I really felt that
Yeah.
story." And I'm like, I can't see that far. I'm blind. I'm 46 years old. But like I looked at them
Yeah.
and I saw the section or wherever they were, and they really like
Totally.
said they Felt it. All right, I got one more crazy question for you before
Yeah.
we get done here, man. Like, okay, so one thing that I think is so amazing about speaking is it's kind of like stand-up comedians or anybody that does anything. You're doing this live. You have no idea what's going to happen
Yep.
ever when you go to like a live event. I mean, it can break out into chaos like
Totally.
at any moment. Like one of the funniest things that ever happened. I was on stage one time and I looked down. I was doing a seminar. I had about 400 people in a room. I think it was in Atlanta or Dallas, somewhere sitting in the South. Hundreds of people. I'm talking. I'm doing my thing. Seminars are different though. You're in a ballroom. You're all crammed in, right? So it's not like a venue. And I'm doing this, and I look down. I'm in the middle of this talk, and I see a lady reach up, and she had a zipper on her shoulder right here. She opens the zipper, and a flying squirrel crawled out of the pocket and sat on her shoulder like a pirate. And she started feeding this flying squirrel sugar glider, whatever it is. And I'm just like, and I never missed a beat. I just kept going, right? But I was just like, do I stop and acknowledge that there is a
Oh,
flying squirrel on? I mean, people around her were like looking over. Is that
I
a
would have
real
called.
animal? And like so many things like that happen. And it's like that's the entertainment value of like being a speaker. Have you ever had anything like just at one of these live things just like crazy happen that just like blew your mind that was even possible?
I've had all sorts of things happen in live events. But I think the story that I could match yours with a little bit, when I was doing some of the high school and college gigs, I was at this Catholic school, pretty big school there. I think there were 300 or 400 kids in the auditorium. There was one kid dead center who was just ripping jokes the entire time. And it was like emanating out from his row. Everyone's giggling at whatever he's saying. And it was a day where I'm like, I've had it. I'm just done, you know? And I said, I'm going to pause here for 1 second, y'all. Would you mind standing up for me? So this kid he's like, and I go, no, just stand up for me. Stand up. So he stands up. I go, what's your name? He goes, my name's Steven. And I said, Steven, you're a funny guy. And he's like, well, not as funny as you. And then everyone starts chuckling again. I go, no, 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 I think you're far funnier. In fact, I want to give you the biggest laugh that you've gotten today. Everyone do me a favor, point at Steven and laugh. So everyone in the auditorium turns back,
That's
points at the kid.
hardcore, bro. That is hardcore.
And then I said, hey, Steven, you got your laugh. Why don't you go sit in the back row? I appreciate
Wow.
you. I go, I appreciate you. But just so you know, this is my show, not yours.
Yeah,
And,
unbelievable,
and
dude.
here's the deal. I got done, and the principal of the school comes over and he said, no one has ever handled that kid the way you did. And
Wow.
I said, I hope it wasn't offensive. I'm going to go, apologize to him and say no, no harm, no foul. And I did. And the guy was like, but I said, hey man, it was a distraction. I can't have distractions in my presentation. So, but I appreciate you being a good sport about it and coming back here. And, but then teachers were coming up saying, I can't believe you put Steven in this place.
Wow.
That
So he
kid's
was like a
such a jerk.
bully or
He
something,
was a bully.
basically.
He was a
Yeah, man.
bully. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like, it's funny because like, like you have to kind of, that's one thing about speak. The moral of that story is you do own the room.
You've
And
got
when
to.
you walk out there, you are in charge. I mean, you absolutely have to be in charge and you do have to take that authority. You can't let
Yep.
people be doing that stuff to you. You can't let anything like that happen. And in speaking, you've just got to act. You have to say, you have to speak, you have to be in the moment. You
Yep.
can't second guess yourself on the stage. You can always learn and change and do things better later or
Totally.
whatever or differently. But man, when the sugar glider crawls out and the bully is bullying you, you got to punch the bully in the nose and you got to throw some nuts at the sugar glider and just keep on. I got to hold the sugar glider though. I did. I got to hold it later. But I was like, I walked down afterwards or during one of the breaks and I was like, we can't have wild animals in my seminar. Okay. So if you could you take your sugar glider home and come back? And she did. She left.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy, man. Well, listen, man, dude, I love what you're doing, dude. Man, I love speaking. I love talking to you. We always have incredible conversations.
We do.
I've got notes here about the 555 and all that stuff, man. So this is so good. But before we go, man, tell everybody about the Shred Method and where they can find you online to check out
Yeah.
everything Adam Carroll's doing, baby.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity too, Shane. We are helping people build a life that they love. And typically that's one where their expenses are considerably lessened and their income is greater. And so the Shred Method is a software product and a course and a community where we'll teach you how to create efficiency with your income. And, our theory is that most people's income is very, very inefficient. It sits in accounts, it, trickles in, but doesn't go to the place it should right away. And our software, through a complex algorithm, tells you exactly where the money should go in the most efficient manner. So you can find more about that at theshredmethod.com. And more than likely, we'll be doing Shred Method presentations at conferences all over the US in 2025. So I'm super pumped about that.
Epic, man. Appreciate you being on the podcast today, brother. Till the
Thanks
next time,
for having
dude.
me, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, that wraps up my interview with Adam Carroll. I love that dude, man. He is such a good speaker, such a good entrepreneur, and just such a good example of how you can go out in the world with your message that you chose and find your way onto stages, find your way onto podcasts. I mean, anything you're doing creating content is basically speaking. And if you don't go share your message, nobody else is going to do it. If you want the line at the end of the stairs, or you want the emails on your list, or you want anything in life, you've got to go out and speak the words. I have a saying that I say at my seminars when I'm teaching people how to be content creators. I've got a training that I do on content creation online, how to get your message out there. And I always say greatness flows through your lips and your fingertips. And Adam Carroll is a guy that has greatness flowing everywhere he goes. Hope you liked today's show. Thank you so much for listening to the Shane Sams podcast. If you've not done it yet, would you go leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else that you listen to these shows? Love getting reviews. I read every single one of them, and we really greatly appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you also check out my other podcast, the Flipped Lifestyle Podcast, FLIPPED lifestyle.com. I always look at the Shane Sam show as me learning. Like, I learned so much from Adam today. I get to talk to these amazing people in my network and people I don't even know, and I get to just learn so much from this. Is where I learn, and hopefully you guys listen in and you get to learn with me. But over on Flipped Lifestyle, that's where I teach. That's where I interview real members of our coaching programs, our Flipped Lifestyle community, where we help entrepreneurs start, build, and grow businesses and go out and grow personally and professionally, so that they can build a life of freedom. So check that out. That's all the time we have for today's podcast. We'll see you next time. Until then, get out there, take action, light it up, y'all. I'm out.